Yes, if you don't have passion, then you may risk the jury thinking that you don't really believe in your case. So if you don't believe in your case, then maybe they shouldn't either. Maybe they need to listen to the other attorney who does have passion and conviction.
Gotcha.
So I agree with KCL, her comment that, yeah, George is definitely turning a new leaf and really, I think, becoming a much better and more effective prosecutor. I think her integrity has always been there. That's a absolute foundational type thing you need as a prosecutor is to have integrity in how you handle and conduct your business. And so I definitely don't have any issues with integrity uh, from uh, from both prosecutors, both Georgia and Sarah. So their integrity is beyond reproach and everything. So that's a good thing to see. So and I think Sarah has more of that passion, and so I think that they're making a more effective dynamic duo by both of them having that passion and being a little bit more animated when they talk.
Rux, by the way, Carl, we're back and people are coming back online. For those joining us, I don't know what happened. I think there's a possibility. I have this little switcher box, and at the bottom right, it says finish. So when I end these live streams, I think I accidentally, Carl, just figure that I think I accidentally bumped that. So I'll make sure I keep that away and I don't bump that button. Anyways, Carl, Roxanne, another question. Carl, does Wendy have to stay in tally? Are they going to be called back, Wendy and also Jeff?
Yeah. So what happened today? What happened today was Wendy was excused temporarily, and I have never seen anybody leave and take off 2 hours away. So what we found out when we're on surviving the survivor today was somebody let Tim know that Wendy was already 2 hours away, so she wasn't going to be back for 2 hours. So that also meant her attorney John Laurel was driving up towards Atlanta apparently to defend President Trump. So in any event, I would never let a witness leave the local area, and I'm having stayed by the courthouse. So for some reason, maybe she's heading back to Miami because I think invariably what happens is if I'm the prosecutor, they're subject to recall, and then I know they're like 7.5 hours away. I'm probably not going to call them again. So probably that's what she was hoping for. So in any event, she did have to come back. She was only 2 hours away instead of being 7.5. So I'm glad she also tried the effort. I think Georgia could have said, well, if she's already 2 hours away, I'm just going to forget about recalling her. But I think she realized smartly that this is an issue that's so important that they were trying to look at a hit in 2013. Why is that even more important? Because of the defense theory. The defense theory is that they never had conspired to murder Dan. It's all Katie and her men's doing. So if this was something that Charlie talked about 2013, think about it. That totally blows that defense theory out of the water because it shows that Charlie was the one that was looking at killing Dan for a year before this killing happened. So that really just shows the real planners of this murder.
Fifi says, I love how Georgia isn't looking at Wendy when Wendy answers her questions. Speaks volumes that Wendy is a liar, as she says, Liah. Comments on that? When she's not looking at her?
No, well, actually, that's not a technique I would use because I'm going to stare them down, and so I don't go through list of questions. Um, she's doing fine with the list I think she's got because she's asking them not too fast, and I think they're not getting she's not getting tripped up and listening for answers because the answers are sort of coming out slow enough where she can digest them before she moves on to the next question. So what I like doing is basically I'm staring down the witness and by me having direct eye contact with them that's not letting up, they get more intimidated and you're going to get actually more they're going to collapse sooner and better that way.
Ann McClure says, Carl, do you think that law enforcement could be watching the remainder of the Adelsons just in case they decide to flee the country if things go south for Charlie?
Well, I think that the issue with that is um, the problem is that if they haven't indicted them yet, they're not having pending charges. they're not going to expend the resources because you'd probably have to. I guess you'd have to have the FBI down there. Um, I don't think the Tallahassee Police Department is going to spend the resources to have agents sticking out and following them around and all that kind of stuff. Um, so I don't think that's going to be the possibility. That's why I think though that maybe they would fly out of the country. I mean, a number of people have said that. So I think that you got a valid point there. And also people, and John, you were the first one to raise that up. And about the boys' lives could be in danger. These people they're really, who knows what they're capable of doing. And if you're willing to kill your grandson's father, what are you capable of doing to those boys, right? So that's something that else that's very very concerning.
Go Georgia says or asks if Wendy has immunity again, how can they use anything at a trial if she's arrested?
Use anything at a trial. Okay, well, the immunity, what it covers is for stuff she's testified to now and anything that's developed from her testimony, right? So it's not just what she says, but if what she says also leads you to find something else, that's what the derivative part of it is. So use means what she testified to in court. The derivative is what you got from subsequent investigation that she tipped you off on by her disclosing her side of the story. So in any event, um, I think that what I would do as a prosecutor is, okay, you don't need anything she testified to now. What you got to do is build your case, and if you believe that she's lied on these three occasions, you charge her with perjury each of those three occasions, and then everything she said could be used against her. That's how you get all that evidence. But it's up to the prosecution where they want to go that route. That's a very aggressive route to use, and I don't know if they're willing to be that aggressive.
Beautiful Waterfall says, I'd love to hear from the in courtroom folks about how the jury is receiving the witnesses thus far. Kind of the problem with that, Beautiful Waterfall, is the fact that there's so few people in there that you're going to hear. They're not going to show up on many of these comments. I would say if you check out Katie Kool-Lady's page again, and it's Katy Cool Lady with only one L. I'll put one of her. Here we go. Here, there's her call sign, and I don't know what she's mentioning. I'm so glad Georgia brought that all back. I didn't realize she was already on her way home. Anyways, that's her handle right there. She has some excellent takes on the juror, and there's someone else that says right here. Hello Peach says Wendy looked like she was smiling at a juror. Did you happen to notice that? I did, Carl. During one of the breaks, she went down the row with her head cocked like this in a submissive way and was smiling and trying to get jurors' attention. And I didn't notice it, but I talked to another person in the court that said, hey, did you notice her smiling at one of the jurors? And one of these jurors smiled back, a male smiled back at her. So in my opinion, Carl, she was clearly trying to win over jury members with her looks and her charm, or whatever you want to say. There was no doubt about that.
Right, and maybe that guy liked receiving that smile from her, but you don't like to see that as a prosecutor on a case like this. But I think that if you're trying to like charm a juror or charm any members of the jury, I think that it just really shows how desperate you are.
Yeah, so Katie Kool-Lady agrees. She says, I made quite a few juror observations today. So Katie, start posting videos. She does post videos, it seems like, every day right now. So that's going to be a good source for her comment. Let's see here.
Do you have some other comments from people that don't follow the case? Somebody complained last time that we were taking all the other commenters on the case, like Katie Kool-Lady and stuff like that. So I don't want to leave.
Lisa and the Lamb, absolutely. Lisa and the Lamb says, old Bambi eyes, Wendy. She's so transparent. Yeah, to me, Carl, just seemed very obvious what she was doing. Right. And I don't think she came across as likable to this jury at all. I think the jurors are going to see right through her, especially the older women, the single mothers. These women, couple of them are in their 50s. It looks like late 50s. So
yeah,
Again, I'm not the best person to qualify
No,
on that,
no, no. But I'm
but
telling you, from my experience, I mean, I'm not there to read the jury, but I know how juries read evidence, right? So that's what I had the experience doing, is knowing how this is going to come across to a juror, how the attorney behavior comes across to a juror. So that's the way I'm confident that all this stuff is going to work very well for the government.
on our way out, Charlie smiled at June and said hi, as if you're on trial for murder. That's a businesswoman did the same thing. That I don't know what that means. Say hi and laughed as a friend. Not quite sure what that meant. Somebody asked how to find Katie Kool-Lady. That's how you spell it, and she's on YouTube. And where else, Carl? Is she somewhere else?
No, that's the wrong spelling, Patricia. You got only
One
one
L.
L.
Yeah, one L, not two. So
Right.
check her out. She's got really great personality and great insight, and she's got total dedication to this case. Let's see here. Is there, let's see.
Any
There's a
any
few.
questions on the evidence, John?
What's that?
Any evidence questions?
I'm looking right now. We have fewer comments coming through since we had to restart, Carl.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see. And a lot of these are repeat people. I'm trying to get some new people that haven't commented yet into the. Oh, here we go. Here's a great one from Jenny. Good evening. Is the older brother, I think his name is Robert, yes it is, expected to testify?
That's something that is a good question, Jenny, because we don't know if he actually is going to testify. I would say that the fact that he's on the witness list is some strong indications that they probably will, but whether he's actually down there or not, I would say if people see him hanging out down in Tallahassee, that's probably the best indicator whether they're going to call him or not, because he's having to come all the way from New York. So I think he could testify to some of the family dynamics and parental manipulation of marital spouses, and how Donna tried to basically cut his love interests out, and he wound up marrying somebody else because he obeyed her demands, and then he realized that I need to marry the person I love, not the person who my mom tells me to marry. So I think if you go some of that dynamics, and also I think probably the even bigger thing he could do is talk about what they told him. So I think everything that they have said to Rob is admissible, everything. So I would say that that would be really key indicators of what, like if he says that they wouldn't talk to me about it, they probably had they had a pact. Probably it's like, hey, look, whatever Robert says, we cannot get. He may start asking us individually, what do we know? What do we think happened? And he's going to start comparing our stories, and we're not going to be able to, keep our stories straight and long enough for the many years we know him, where he's going to be suspicious of us. So just not talk about it. And if he asks anything, just say, we don't want to talk about it. So that also is showing consciousness of guilt. So that too is something that Robert could testify to. So that's what I really like doing as a trial attorney, is calling witnesses to testify. What did this key witness say to other people? And a lot of that are friends or family members.
JB Christine says, Charlie has one kid. I put that up there, Carl, as a reminder to people that are just getting into this case now. They might not know that Charlie does have one kid, and isn't he about 5 years old right now or so?
I think he would have been born around 2017, so yeah, about 6 years old is my guess.
Miss Scarlett says, question, Carl, what will Rashbaum try to do with the Dolce audio? Say it, Charlie's meaning can't be deciphered, as in we can't understand what's going on. That's going to be, to me, Carl, the next really fascinating part of this trial is when this comes out. Because again, I think this is going to be really riveting testimony that just completely nails Charlie.
Well, Miss Scarlett, I would say this is one of those deals where it's going to be so preposterous that I don't even want to venture to guess how ludicrous it'll be. I mean, he's probably going to say that they're really talking code about the extortion. So I mean, who knows what? It's just going to be it's going to be laughable again. So poor Rashbaum. That's all he's got to work with. But yeah, it's very damning, and it's going to be another great week for the prosecution next week.
Scary Mary, excuse me, Scary Mary says Wendy's smugness and inappropriate laughter shone through yesterday and today.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Scary Mary. She got worse and worse as time went on because she couldn't maintain her composure, and that's typically what I see in witnesses that they can walk in there trying to keep a mindset, but the more you're like a battering ram, like Georgia was, the fortress walls and her mind start crumbling away, and her true behavior comes out.
Now, this next name, I'm not even going to try to say, but they say it's a comment. They killed Dan Markel, and now the children are almost grown men. Yeah, I've got a problem with that too. They're I think 13 and 14 right now, and by the time Ruth, Phil, and the rest of the Markels get meaningful time, shoot, they might be 16 and 17, Carl, or even older.
Yeah, Celine Iris, I would agree that this is very the length of this trial has been very disturbing. I think any outsider attorney that looks at this would be like, what in the world's going on in Tallahassee? Why can't they get their act together down there? So it's probably been politics from the previous state attorney that had carried over and infected it for some while, and they're finally fighting through the politics that have probably kept this case under wraps for so long.
Phoebe Beach has a great question, one that I can speak to because I just drove down Trescott a few days ago with my car. She says, how long is Trescott, and did Wendy enter on the longest route down the road before she saw the police block? That's a great way of framing it, Phoebe, because that's absolutely what happened. She entered it on the northeast side, which is the long side. And for her to say from Centerville, um, Carl, it's like between 3/4 of a mile and a mile. So it's just completely preposterous. And it just shows to me that she did go down to visit the crime scene with her crime scene inspection, because it wasn't the short route. The short route from the south, I want to say it's basically maybe 10 houses up, 12 houses up approximately. So, a few hundred yards. So
Mhm.
that's a great question. And that's one part of the testimony today, Carl. I wish the prosecution would have made this a little bit more clear with a better graphic than they had put up there. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, well, what I would do if this was my case is I would actually ask to have the jurors go from the house the rental house she was living in, and drive all the way there, go to ABC Liquor, spend a few minutes there, then go all the way to where she had lunch with the folks, and then maybe even go to the police department, show that distance to show that all that time she knew there was oodles of squad cars outside of Dan Markel's house. And keep in mind, I thought this was a huge point to bring up. I guess I sort of addressed it earlier, but maybe I didn't do it good enough. The She mentioned that she never called or she never knew the status of the children that morning. Do you realize how damning that is against her? Because that makes it even more important of a reason why she should have like ran out of her car and said, "My kids could be there. What's going on?"
Yeah, that's a
So
great point.
I'd always thought it was Dan Markel. Remember when he called her about 9:04, 9:05 in the morning? Wendy let it go to voicemail. She wouldn't answer. Well, that's right about the time he's dropping off the kids. So why wouldn't you answer? Or at least call him back, right? If you were away from your phone, why wouldn't you call him back? Do you know who she talked to instead? Charlie. She talked to Charlie and her mom and all that kind of stuff. She didn't call Charlie back, or excuse me, Dan back until after the time she suspected him of being killed. And then, but she wasn't hearing any reports from anybody else, and nobody knew anything. Was Dan killed? What's going on? And that's when she decides, I'm just going to go there and see for myself. I think that's what the prosecution theory would be. But so in any event, I think that that was very, very key piece of evidence there. Um,
Carl, Ann has a great question. I'd really like to know how Katie already knew that Dan had been murdered when Garcia called her to let her know it was done. And that might come out, Carl, right, with Katie's testimony if she gets put on the stand?
yeah, yeah. I think Katie could definitely answer that one, and she'll say because Wendy went to the scene and said, "Yeah, must have happened because there's cop cars all around the house," right? So I would like to hear the cell phone testimony too. Um, I can't recall who she called after she left the house there by Dan's, and but if whoever she called, whether it be Donna or Charlie, the next person she called of those two would have been the one to relay it eventually down to Katie. So yeah, that's how it happened. It had to have happened that way because it wasn't even in the news yet, right? So how would they know that Dan was murdered up in Tallahassee when it wasn't on the news? And no one else had direct linkage to Katie except through the Adelsons. And we know that Wendy was at the crime scene. So that's the only way it can make sense, assuming that's true that Luis is being true, right? So if he was making that up, then that could blow that theory out. But assuming Luis is being credible on that, but I think it does sound credible him saying that.
YouTube Jenny asks or states, "My heart hurts so much for the children." Amen to that.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the real motivators why I agreed to get on talking about this case because I just thought, man, these Markells and the boys suffering like that and living with around these folks that killed their dad, that's just really despicable.
Hot Coffee Chats has a little bit of a challenge, Carl. Driving to the crime scene makes this big evidence? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Well, that's something that if you're hating and you're facing all this potential loss of your job at the university, your whole life is about ready to change for the worst, and you have an opportunity to escape the hell you consider Tallahassee, and you get to be set up for success in Miami around your family and have basically no visitation issues, no Dan Markel issues the rest of your life, then that is what you wanted to go find out and see what the heck was going on. So the odds of her going that route, yeah, it is big evidence because it is a crime scene. So why would she drive there unless she's wanting to do an inspection to see if it finally happened? Because keep in
Well,
mind, she's been waiting for this for a year to happen, right? They've been talking about how to get this thing taken care of for a year. So, well, she just probably figured these bumbling idiots my brother hired can't even get this job done. I'm going to go see for myself.
yeah, and the fact that she lied about this, Carl, she gave different accounts of
Right.
this trip towards the crime scene, and she says she can see the tape from Centerville Road. Well, no, you can't because the tape is about a mile away on a curved road.
Yeah, so I would say, hot coffee chats, you need to see more evidence and that we've talked about on this channel, and also look at other channels like Deep Dive True Crime that have some of the actual testimony of folks that were either at the police interview or they're at the other two trials for Katie 1 and Katie 2.
Go George again. The map in the first trials was excellent. This one was much less clear as to the distance she drove. That's the first thing I noticed. Go Georgia as well when that was displayed today.
Yeah, you really got to make the evidence come alive as a prosecutor. So that's something that is you know you're missing the mark big times, especially if you're not going to have the jury drive to that route. And then I also have the jury drive the route from Aqua Ridge, where Wendy was renting a house, to the closest route to a liquor store near that restaurant where she had lunch. Because that's what a normal person would do. You're not going to drive way out of the way down to down Centerville Road and then take Trescott, which has all these speed bumps. There's no sidewalks. There's tons of foliage and trees and weeping willows and all this dense foliage along the right up near the curbs from what I've seen. So basically you'd have to drive especially slow, not only for the speed bumps, but you'd also have to worry about kids being, running around the neighborhood or something like that. So it's not a shortcut by any stretch of the imagination.
Tornado Artist says, Carl, I thought total jury view and squad cars and tape set up like say of murder for jury to see how close it was and look. Okay, so basically the same thing we're talking about. And we don't have the Murdaugh police body cam. So I think that what they're getting at here, Carl, is what you just said, which is the jury really needs to have that total view by being actually
Right.
brought there in a car. Because when I
Well, but
did,
like I say, it's a total package deal here because it's not just going to the crime scene. What's even worse is that you didn't even care to find out, are your kids, something happened to your kids? Is that why the police are there, right? Because I just got done saying that Wendy testified today that she never checked to see, and it might have been yesterday. I'm sorry if I'm getting that mixed up, but she never knew whether her kids got dropped off at daycare or not. Well, you'd really, if you didn't know that, you'd for sure not leave and turn around and get out of there right away, right? So that shows that she trusted the killers not to have hurt the kids, make sure they're dropped off before they go ahead and kill Dan. So the fact that she doesn't care about the kids enough to run to the house, to stop the cops, say, hey, what's going on? I used to live there. My kids spent the night there. What the heck is going on? Instead, she concocts a story about, oh, I thought it was some downed tree, even though it was a calm day, no winds or anything for that week. And then on top of it, think about the fact that, um, you know, she spent all this time then going to get the bullet rye. Then she goes to lunch. She's at lunch. She gets picked up about 2:40 in the afternoon. So several hours later, then she's apprehended there by the Detective Isom from that restaurant. And so she never made the connection that this had something to do with all those cop cars around Dan's house where her kids stayed. And so if you notice the video when she's at the police station, she then suddenly goes, oh, is that why all those cops cars were there? Of course you'd make that connection immediately. You wouldn't even leave that place until you knew your kids were okay. So it's a total package of all those factors that just show that it just shows consciousness of Dan being killed that day.
yeah, as Casey will remind us, and I didn't know these numbers, so I'm going to post her comment again, Carl. Wendy drove 9 miles to drive past the crime scene instead of 3 miles to the liquor store. She drove 6 miles out of her way. That's
Right.
good to remember. I didn't know that. Thanks, Casey.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. If you have the jury drive those routes, then that's the kind of stuff that's really going to make it sink in a jury. But they probably are not going to do it because they probably feel they don't need to because it's such a slam dunk win. So
Yeah. I mean, Carl, it's just so preposterous. Lisa in the lab, to continue this discussion, says the weird part to me is Wendy saying she thought there was police tape because of weather or an electrical storm, but then admits the weather was fine that day. Trees just don't fall down on a nice day. So good point.
right. Well, there had been other cars besides just police cars, or there was like the evidence technicians. Those are not squad cars. Those are more like vans, and they would have said like evidence unit, something like that for the Tallahassee Police Department. So those are the kind of folks that you would have known it's not a down tree, and you would have realized that you don't. I mean, when have you ever seen a congregation of 9 to 12 squad cars worried about a down tree, and you don't see any tree service trucks there?
Let's see here. Hey, real quick, let's go to. We're not trying to diagnose people with this question, but we can speak to it. I think, Carl. Wendy seems like she has BPD, borderline personality disorder. She reminds me of Jodi Arias. Jodi was flirting with the cops when she was questioned. Cringe. Yeah, I see parallels with that too, as far as the flirting.
Yeah, I'm talking as a prosecutor, so I do not. I would talk about disorders of personalities if I'm a defense counsel, but as a prosecutor, if you notice, I've never said anything about anybody being a narcissist. I've never said anything about any kind of other personality disorders because as a prosecutor, you don't want to try to talk about the mental status of the defendant. So I've just stayed away from that from all the Adelsons. So I say stuff is sick and disgusting the way like the grandkids are being treated and how cruel and heartless a lot of stuff was. But yes, you otherwise have a good valid point. But yeah, if you don't mind. And you're also an RN, so maybe you're a psych nurse as well. So you probably have better insights for me than that, than me. But I will say this: as a defense counsel, I know all about the different personality disorders because I got to know how to push the buttons of the state's witnesses that are against me. So yeah, I definitely know stuff. I just don't want to talk about it here. So thank you.
Yeah, and I brought that on there, Carl. excuse me, because of the bottom part of it more than the first. I knew, yeah, you're right, Carl. We don't label people. We're not psychologists. We just stick to the facts and the impacts that their actions have on innocent young children. Jennifer Ray says, do you know if Wendy was sitting in the courtroom listening to defense opening statements? How did she know the defense theory when testifying? I can speak to the first part, Carl. No, she was not sitting in the courtroom listening to. She could only be brought in when it was her time, so she was excluded from it. Carl, I'm assuming that her lawyer, John Laurel,
Yeah.
advised her on that.
Well, I think that the way Roshbaum questioned her, he if you watch the way he started out, he says like, you and I have never talked before. I haven't done a deposition for you. I've never interviewed you before. This is our first time meeting. And then he just had all these questions for whatever it was, a couple hours, and then she was just rapidly firing answers as if they'd rehearsed this thing for days. So what the comment I made on Survivor was that the way that would have worked was all the questions that he's asking, he would have just submitted to John Laurel, and John Laurel would have gone over with her. So that's the way she knew the questions, and they probably told her what the theory was at that point. So who knows if she even was telling the truth on that.
Sonny M., who was in the courtroom today, asked Carl, why don't the Markells testify?
Yeah, Sonny. I don't. I mean, I don't know if they want to see this part of the trial. It's more important to them to see the trial that's going on rather than being sequestered. And if I was a defense counsel and for Charlie and the parents wanted to see the trial, I would ask the judge for an excusal if they allowed that, for local rules to have an exception for like victims of a heinous murder like this. So, but I guess it would be nice to have Ruth to talk about the suffering of visitations, because, like I've said all along, it's like if you're cruel enough to keep the Markells away from the two boys, you're in my mind that is you're so cruel to those kids that you wouldn't think twice about even killing their dad. So that I put that all up there sort of in the same category.
Yeah, I say they love themselves more than they love their children, and also they very frequently hate their ex more than they love their own children. They do not put their own children first, and frequently they use their children as tools of leverage and manipulation. Scrolling through the comments, Carl, here's the one for you from Matilda. Question: if Katie has a plea deal secured, will she only receive it if she is called to testify? Also, doesn't she have to testify now that the defense is naming her as an extortionist? Great questions.
Yeah, I think, Matilda, that as a prosecutor, I would especially want to bring her now to refute the defense theory. I don't think you need to necessarily, but one of the things I don't ever want to do as a prosecutor is leave a major puzzle piece like that off the table and not bring it up there, because here's what Rashbaum's going to argue. He's going to argue the prosecutor knew this theory is correct. That's why they never called Katie. They never called Katie because they knew she set this whole thing up for an extortion. They can't. They're saying they just found out about it now, and what do? They run and hide, and they don't want to present the person that set this all up to frame and extort Charlie Adelson. So, I think it sort of forces their hand to have to do that. But I think, like I say, embrace it and just say it for what it is. And I think the way Charlie had the ability to manipulate people with his money, I think we've seen that with June. So I think the jury's going to really get that part of it.
KCL says Lewis seemed very credible to me today. I agree with her 100%. You?
Yeah, I mean he didn't go into too much, but I mean it is sort of eerie and scary to think that he's that close to jurors and he thinks nothing about killing somebody. And granted, he wasn't the trigger puller, but if he's Latin Kings, I mean they do a lot of violence, I would imagine, down there in South Miami area.
Stella says Donna and Harvey have ruined their own children's lives. Even Rob's kids are effective. That's a good point, Carl. I call that the downstream effect of parental alienation. and families like this is it's just a huge ripple effect of all the kids that are affected. I mean, just add up all the kids right now who are fatherless or motherless because of the
Mm.
actions of this Adelson family.
You know, I've never heard. That's a great point. So I've never heard anyone talk about Rob's kids. I never even considered that. We always considered the whole family tree of the Markells up in Canada. But you bring up a great point that there's actually other part of the family tree of Adelsons, because not, Rob is this great stand-up guy, and obviously his kids would be taught to be the same. So yeah, so if there's estrangement there because Rob feels like he can't be around those kind of people, his own parents and Wendy and Charlie. So then that means he's also not going to see the two boys, Ben and Lincoln. So yeah, it's just it's just so sick and disgusting.
Here's a great question by Mrs. D. Was Charlie ever interrogated by the police? And if not, why not? He wasn't, was he?
No, I think from what I've seen of police reports, I haven't seen all of them, but what happened was when Wendy was driving down with her parents the day after the synagogue memorial service, they took off that next morning, and when Detective Isom called her, she said something like, "I don't have good reception. Let me call you back." And 5 minutes later, John Laurel is calling that detective saying, "Hey, I'm her lawyer." Well, how do you secure a lawyer that fast? And what if you're worried about the killers being on loose? Why would you hire a defense lawyer? So, and from that point, I think they never even attempted to reach out to Donna Harvey or Charlie. And that goes to the point. What I would do is, um, well, find out who they're talking to and what they're saying. And that's why I think Rob being courageous enough to stand up, because he's actually what he's really doing is fighting in honor of his ex brother-in-law Dan, but he's really also fighting for Ben and Lincoln. And when you stop to think about it, because he's that like you're saying, the whole relationship is set for the from his kids, assuming he has kids, along with Ben and Lincoln. So yeah, that would maybe help if they all get arrested and thrown in prison and convicted. I think that would maybe help maybe them establish that relationship. But I mean, they're already in their teens, so yeah, it's just pretty sad.
Switching gears real quick, Nick Latham says, yes, Wendy's venom really came out when the foster care got brought up. And her comment about the grandparents' rights being unconstitutional was nasty. I 100% agree. You, Carl?
Yeah, Nick. I mean, this is part and parcel of the kind of stuff. If Nick was on the jury, he's going to write this note down, and Nick is going to bring this up to the other jurors, and they're going to say she was so mean and nasty and cruel, and she's cruel about visitation to sweet Ruth Markel. I mean, this is like just so debased and evil. So yeah, those are kind of people that that you definitely think are behind this kind of stuff, and so that's why all these commenters are concluding the same.
Cherry Ongs asked you a question. Will Charlie get the death penalty if he's convicted of this murder?
No, because they didn't try this as a capital case. The state attorney's office decided that because the actual trigger puller didn't get life without parole, which is Sigfredo. Remember, excuse me, he didn't get the death penalty, so he got life without parole. So if the trigger puller, the jury didn't give him death penalty, then they're not going to do death penalty against anybody else involved. But I don't agree with that reasoning at all. To me, but for the Adelsons and specifically now we got Charlie on trial, he's the worst. He's worse than any of the hitmen, because without him calling the shots, there would be no death of Dan Markel. So I think they got it wrong. So I yeah, that's troubling.
Carl, does part of it maybe the fact that Dan himself was against the death penalty when he was alive?
They've not said that, so I don't think prosecutors usually don't go by what the victim wants. They look at the society, protection of society and whatnot. So, in any event, I think for Charlie, it is going to be a death penalty anyway. It does cost a lot more money to do a death penalty. There's a lot, I think you need probably in Florida, you probably need 2 defense lawyers. I mean, it's going to cost the county a whole lot more. So that's probably also a factor of that as well. But I just don't think he's going to last in prison very long. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, and I think a worse punishment, quite frankly, for him is life in prison. I mean, he's in his mid-40s now. And by the way, today it was his birthday. I don't think a lot of people know that. Somebody in there was joking with a bailiff about breaking out a happy birthday uh, song for him, but he quashed that pretty quickly. Carl, let's go back to the comments. Tennis Girl has a great question. Do you think it's possible to have a hung jury in this case?
Well, that's always a possibility, but if you do your good jury selection right, and if you don't have somebody that's wanting to like protect Wendy's honor or something like that, Wendy probably who Wendy captured was looking at her. That would probably be the most likely one to be the hung juror. It's going to be a guy, and because there's only been it's always been women understand women better and they're lying, and the same with men and their agendas for each of the sexes. So, if you look at the women comments on Wendy, they're much more incisive and critical of Wendy's behavior than guys are, as a general rule. And there's only a couple of guys that I've seen in the thousands and thousands of comments that either think there's not enough against Wendy or maybe she's not so guilty. So I think that her trying to make that connection with the jury, sure, there's a possibility of hung jury, but I just don't see that happening because you're going to have so many other people that are going to be really gangbusters about making sure that they talk some sense into that holdout juror or jurors.
By the way, Katie Kool-Aid and I next week, Carl, will be doing some on the street interviews with each other, talking about the case. She's doing these daily, and I thought that was a really good idea and it inspired me to approach her. So look forward to that. And got another comment from her. She's got such great comments. She says, I think he looks, meaning Charlie, looks pretty resigned and defeated now compared to his cocky maestro persona. I agree. Do you, Carl?
Yeah, I mean he looked really bad yesterday. I think today he's because he's got some old connections in there. So I think that's causing him to have more of a. He's looking for stuff that can humor him, and so I think June and I think he was humored by when Fitzpatrick got beat up a little bit by Rashbaum. So, but he's not really had a whole lot to look forward to, and yeah, so I think he's. I mean, today he had his hands over his face. He was going like this much of the time, or like this, and just looking comfortable. I mean, I would never let a client sit there like that and look comfortable. The last thing you want is your client looking comfortable in the courtroom.
Gmail account, great name, great handles. Ask Carl, will Charlie go to the same prison as Rivera and Garcia?
No, they actually have segregation orders right now to keep like Luis separate from because they're in the same jail, right? Segredo is in the same jail facility, Leon County Jail, as both Luis and also Charlie. So as well as Katie. So I mean, she'd be separate anyway because she's a different sex. But they're going to make sure all those folks are not in contact with each other. So that's not going to be an issue.
Pharaoh Gamma asks, will Charlie take the stand?
Well, he pretty much has to have any consistency of his defense because nobody else is going to admit to this radical story that Charlie was extorted. So if Rashbaum just wants to try to throw that out there and make innuendos that this is what really happened, he's got to call a witness to be able to do that. And the only one that could really do that is Charlie. So pretty much Charlie's going to have to take the stand.
Abigail H. says it was bizarre how he, meaning Charlie, was laughing so hard over the nasty names Donna called Dan.
Yeah, I think I remember that, Abigail. I thought that was, I mean, his demeanor is just so unbecoming of him facing a murder trial. It just shows that he doesn't take this thing serious, and he's not concerned about Dan's death, and he's not really that worried about the outcome. I think he's just pretty much resigned to his own fate. And I think that's the other thing I was going to mention is that the opening when I was on Survivor yesterday, the opening of Roshbaum was so pathetic, and the questions I saw rolling in from some of the I think I recognize some of the same names as what we got here tonight. Um, they were so funny in what they're saying about Charlie looking defeated and stuff like that, and Roshbaum is sounds like he's a prosecutor against Charlie or stuff like that. I mean, there were such funny comments. I was literally laughing so much that I was trying to control myself, and I actually had tears 3 different times. I had tears running down out of both eyes. I was busting a gut that hard because I thought it was just so funny, and a lot of times the most serious moments, anyway. Sometimes that's sort of an emotional outlet that way, and plus I didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, so I was prime candidate to really be in that kind of laughter if it was funny, and man, it was those your guys' comments were just hilarious.
Lisa says the saddest part to me is I feel like the Adelsons have probably brainwashed the two boys to think that Dan was not a good person and also that they are innocent. Of course, I talked to a family member today. I'm not going to say which one, but that's exactly what their concern is and how this justice still isn't meted out. How old will this person be by the time finally they can have a normal access without jumping through hoops and getting through Wendy's control?
Hey, that reminds me. I heard that somebody was saying that the boys, or maybe the older boy, is uh, is talking to Charlie a lot in jail. And I'm like, what? So it's sort of like Stockholm syndrome, maybe, where they got them so buffaloed and controlled that way. The other thing I wish that Georgia would have brought up though today, this would have been really good, is if they would have brought up the fact that if you would at least confront her on the fact that the boys have never been to their dad's grave. The boys have never been to Canada. The boys have never been alone without an Adelson there hovering over with almost like a leash and a muzzle over the boys. That is so sick. It's almost like a cult type thing. So yeah, these boys, who knows what? I mean, I'm sure they got Dan's, intellectual brilliance and all that kind of stuff, but the character type of stuff. If they're being influenced by the character of these folks, and yeah, it's going to take a lot of undoing. But I think eventually it will happen. If the law enforcement does their right thing by them.
Yeah, and to add to your point, Carl, not a single overnight that I'm aware of when I've asked around these questions to the people that would know, not a single overnight. And these boys are 13 and 14 years old. And yeah, that's why I got into this case was the whole parental alienation aspect. So I know what my son had to go through during those years. And I have no doubt that Wendy is playing as the victim role and poor me, I can't find a job. That's the other thing, Carl, real quick. Did you notice today, or was it yesterday, where she mentions she's licensed as attorney, but she's not working as attorney right now? Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, it was sort of vague what exactly she's doing. So I don't know per se exactly because it was vague, and she really didn't say what she did in the last two trials because they didn't ask her in detail. She just said she was a lawyer and where she lived. They didn't say what kind of law you practice in, what kind of jobs you doing, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that maybe some doors are closing as they should be if you have this kind of a reputation.
Sonny says that is so sad for those two boys. Is that 100% that they talked to Charlie in jail? That's horrible. I can answer that, Carl. I was told that by somebody earlier this week. And I said, "Really?" And they showed me the document that was downloaded from the court's website. So that's absolutely true. Um, It was basically an email or text messaging type service in which that was going on. And I'm not going to share, because they're minors, what the conversation was about, but that is absolutely true, that was happening. Uh, let's see here. And we're going to wrap up here pretty quickly, Carl. A couple more here. Those boys have Dan's DNA too, so I pray that guides them eventually. Yeah, I've got a lot of hope in this, and plus, keep in mind, I mean, long term, that I know boys don't quite get the mature male brain until around 25. So, and I've been down this road with my son before. He went from being completely brainwashed against me when he was about 10, 11, being afraid of me and crying when being dropped off in my care, to today we have a completely normalized relationship and we can actually talk about the past and laugh about it at times. So, Carl, we're going to leave it right here. Until next week, Carl and I will be back. We're not sure about the time because there's things that happen after the trial, meeting with certain people, certain lawyers, not lawyers for us, but lawyers who are covering the case, and also victims and things like that. So we're going to aim for about 9 p.m. Eastern, but please, about an hour prior, check the post that I make, the scheduled posts on when we'll actually broadcast. So everybody, thanks again. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday evening with another live. Thank you.